A term from philosophy, epistemology, is a useful tool for us as we think about Nathaniel Hawthorne and the authors who will follow him in this course. It's worthwhile to put the term into a bit of 19th century American context. If we think about what we call the antebellum period, roughly from the 1820s to the Civil War, amazing shifts in science, religion, technology, economics, material production, transportation occur. And these shifts and changes basically change the life experience of most Americans from what could have been described as very similar to the early modern world at the beginning of this period to something very close to our modern world at the end of the period. At the beginning of this period, most Americans are living in rural areas in small homes without running water, without electricity, without mass-produced items, and without the sort of dynamic forms of capitalism and sophisticated technology, production, and transportation that we're used to today. By the end of that period, trains had crisscrossed America. Factory production all over the North and the Northeast was very impressive and rapidly exploding into what would be the dynamic American economy of the late 19th and early 20th century. Major shifts were occurring in the physical material world. So too were shifts occurring in the world of religious faith and belief and science. In particular, skepticism about traditional religion had emerged as a major social force in American culture. And we see it happening before our very eyes when we read people like Hawthorne and Emerson and Melville and Frederick Douglass and Harriet Beecher Stowe. They're engaged in these big questions in a world that is rapidly changing underneath their feet. And three vital reform movements also dominate this period and contribute mightily to the questioning that is going on and the reimagining of our world that is going on. And those three movements are temperance, which was a response to high levels of alcoholism, drunkenness, and alcohol abuse in American culture, especially among men, the abolitionist movement, the anti-slavery movement, and the women's movement that is going to begin to pick up steam in the decade right before the Civil War and then have to renew its efforts after the war. So a lot is going on, and so it's not actually that hard to imagine people starting to wonder about truth in the world and our ability to know what truth is and to differentiate between what is real and what is not. And epistemology gives us a useful term for tracking that conversation and tracking the reflections of our authors on that idea. So here's a definition from the Routledge Encyclopedia of Philosophy. And what I think is really interesting is obviously it's all about knowledge, the nature of knowledge, what is knowledge, the sources of knowledge, and the limits of knowledge. So it's really sort of this question of what is true, what is real, and can we know it? And if so, how do we know it? And that spawns a series of epistemological questions that we're going to be returning to again and again when we're looking at American literature. So many of our writers are increasingly going to ask the question, can we know what is real and what is not? And if so, how? And what are the best pathways? What are the approaches to discovering these truths? Is it religious faith? Is it intellectual reason? And what are some of the obstacles to discovering what is real and true? What comes between human beings and what is real and what is true? And these are exactly the questions. Sorry about that. These are exactly the questions that Nathaniel Hawthorne is asking in the first three stories of his that we're going to read. In each story, there's a fundamental question about what is real, what's actually going on here, and what is imposing itself between the characters and their understanding of reality, and between us, the readers, and our understanding of reality. And in all three stories, there are major questions about just literally what's happening, what is true, and how can we know it. So all of these stories explore epistemological doubts, and through them, Hawthorne is exploring the epistemological crisis that is emerging in his own life and in the life of many antebellum 19th century American thinkers and writers. So keep an eye out for these questions of epistemology as you read Hawthorne and beyond. See you in Blackboard.